is. They're told that there's going to be a need all over the world, and so it says, so there's a group of Christians in Antioch that says we're going to seek specifically to support and to help and to serve, to send relief to the Christians living in Judea.
And the thing about Antioch was a Gentile church.
Mm-hmm.
Judea was a Jewish church.
Right.
And that was huge back then.
Yeah, so they see... Well, I mean, it's interesting, this in 4 verses. I mean, and I've been in some congregations, and I've not been here long enough to say it's this one because I've not been here long enough to say that. But I've been in some congregations that what took 4 verses to explain would take 4 months to figure out how we're going to do it, right? Hey, there's going to be a need. Let's determine a committee. Let's assign a deacon. Let's figure out how much we want to give. Let's make sure we're going to give it to an organization that's going to, distribute it the way we want to distribute it. Okay, is the church it's going to, are they faithful? Right? Is this a faithful congregation? Right? It's all these conversations go into that, right? And there might have been some of that here because there were elders, there were people involved in the organization of it, but really, for the most part, though, it seems like this was the obvious thing to do. For the church and for the Christians, this was the obvious thing to do. To come to understand that there are other Christians in need, we're going to serve them. The organization of it would come, but the obvious thing to do was to serve, right? And that was part of the fellowship, right? Church in Macedonia, right? This is one we mentioned a second ago. It says, we want you to know, brothers, about the grace of God that's been given among the churches of Macedonia. For in a severe test of affliction, their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. For they gave according to their means, as I can testify, and beyond their means of their own accord, begging us earnestly for the favor of taking part in the relief of the saints. And this, not as we expected, but they gave themselves first to the Lord and then by the will of God to us. As we continue to understand fellowship, what do we see here in their example?
They gave first to the Lord.
Okay, they gave themselves first to the Lord.
They begged to participate.
They begged to participate.
Out of their poverty.
Out of their poverty. We see at this point that not only were they giving according to their means, but also beyond their means, of their own accord. What does that mean?
Willing.
They willingly gave. What drove that? What do you think drove their generosity? What do you think drove their willingness to give? What do you think drove their... Honestly, it's like they were desperate to help. Right? What do you think drove that? Yeah.
I think of like when the hurricanes have hit, the Cajun Navy comes in.
Mm-hmm.
They just leave things behind,
mm-hmm.
and they go in and do whatever they can to help. They just willingly are doing it. I know crews that have tree cutting capabilities. They just stop their business. They go down to help that. They're giving up way beyond the ordinary to do those kinds of things.
Well, with the early Christians, it's almost like they wanted desperately for other people to have the peace and the joy that they have. It's like, you have to know this. You have to take my money. You have to go take it somewhere else.
Anything else? Go ahead. Yeah.
I don't think most of us fully appreciate what it means to rely on others. If you go back 50 years, or if you go back 100 years, there was a time, even in this country, where families relied on their neighbors. They relied not only on the family itself, but the extended family, the community. Different individuals would come together and they would all help one farmer harvest his crop. And then they would do the same for another and another and another. It's one of those things that I don't think we today in the 21st century fully understand and grasp, partly because of the abundance with which we have. If we were to go to a third world country, just into Central America or South America, much less across the ocean, But if we were to go to another country, I think we would see readily just how blessed we are. The fact that we have a house with a concrete floor or perhaps hardwood floor as opposed to a dirt floor. We have windows versus no windows. We have a roof over our head that actually stops the rain as opposed to a leaky straw roof. The bottom line is that we have blessings beyond compare. And yet, because we live in a time of great abundance, if you will, and I know some of us may not think that, but really and truly, we are very blessed. And I think sometimes it helps to understand the timing and the particular situation. The church in Jerusalem was suffering not just because of the poverty that many of those individuals were dealing with, but because of the persecution that they were facing. They were facing persecution from the Jews and the Romans. And that persecution did not cease. In fact, many in the church in the first century ended up worshiping in the tunnels, the grave tunnels under the ground. And that was how they could do it in secret.
I think it's easy. We've talked some about like places that are far away, that it's easy to kind of like put that out of our mind, but it's also easy to avoid even local areas that like make us uncomfortable. That's the word I always.
I mean, how far would we have to walk to find poverty? I mean, try 500 feet. I mean, I'm here every day. Try 500 feet. I mean, and to a point we made earlier. I mean, it's you see people close by that need help, and humiliatingly, not like humbly, humiliatingly, my knee-jerk reaction is they need a job. If they wanted a place to live and a roof over their head and food to eat, they could figure it out, right? And there's different experiences we have in life that have driven us to, get to that point, right? We've either been taken advantage of, or you see people who, over time, you come to understand aren't wanting to work for their food like we see, talked about in Scripture, but at the same time, it's how easy is it for us to distance ourselves from the needs of others when we want to, right? At this point, it would seem that for some, myself included, it takes a tear-jerking picture or video with the right Sarah McLachlan song behind it for me to just be ready to hand over an amount to help. Go ahead.
I went to a meeting a while back. This is work, this is not church. And this was about, they were celebrating the life of a lady who was, in her later years, a philanthropist, well-known business person. And the whole thing it started when she was young. It started because of her faith. She participated in her community. She gave help to those who needed help when she saw help was needed. And it was just a way of life that she had.
Yep.
One thing that stands out is they're giving out of their extreme poverty, so they know what poverty is like. And I kind of take, like as a teacher, like I always, when I'm coaching teachers, I always say, find that kid who needs a win, and they will be your best helper in your classroom. Well, it's kind of like this, like these are people who need a win, and they understand, so they're begging to have a win. Like they're begging to help because that gives them an opportunity to help someone, and they truly understand what it's like.
Yeah.
That's great joy in giving.
Right. Good.
I think it is really important too that, most of us in here obviously do have a lot and we're very blessed. I think that the knowledge of knowing that close by that someone might not, I think we also need to, I think we need to realize that it could also be someone in this room. And I think that that person would not need to feel like they can't give, because I love in there that it says that their abundance of joy also overflows. So I think that even though most of this is about giving and giving of what you have, if you don't have anything physically to give, you still have that abundance of joy. So I think that this can encompass everyone, even those that literally have nothing to give physically, that abundance of joy can be in all of us through Christ, and to let that overflow.
Well, one thing I don't want to ignore, and probably should have recognized earlier, is the examples we are looking at. While we obviously have teachings from Jesus and others where we're told to help those in need kind of without restriction, the examples we've looked at are churches and Christians helping other churches and Christians. And the reason why I bring that up now is because we are talking about fellowship and our understanding of fellowship. And, I wonder, like, how they really felt and understood what they were doing. I think if we think about, when we see just awful situations, be it in third world countries, or we send mission groups to other Baja, or where'd they go? Honduras, is that a country we went to this summer? Honduras, all right, or other places we support, and I think we see pictures or videos or stories come back from that, and our reactions are good, our reactions are grateful. And I just wonder how, as they did this, how they thought about fellowship in that. Like, I think that sometimes this recognition that we give and help because these are people that have less than us, it can distort our perspective of fellowship a little bit if we're not careful. In the sense that somehow we can kind of get this complex that we're kind of the better off Christians and they're the lesser off Christians. Not lesser off in faith, but just they have less and we have more, and so it's our responsibility to see that they have more than they currently have, right? And there's obviously some truth to that, but that can distort our perspective of fellowship, and that we don't do so just because they have less. We do so because they're our family. They're our Christians and brothers and sisters. In reality, they're our equals, right? They may have some physical needs that we can meet, but in reality, they are our equals, right? And in fact, just given the strength of the church in the first century, when they were poor, when they were suffering, there might be some things that they may have some greater strengths in that we don't have because we are so affluent. We do live in abundance.
I had an elder once that said, we talk about the blessings we have in this country and all that things. He said, maybe it's not just, it's a blessing. Maybe it's not a blessing.
Yeah.
That those things have so corrupted us that it is not really a blessing.
And we're move on, but I went to this conference last weekend. I might have said this. I don't know if I did. I wrote it in my article. If you read the bulletin, whatever. I'm getting to that point where I tell my kids the same stories every time I drive past the same place, right? It's just where I'm at in life. Now I lost my train of thought. I'm also doing that. I went to this conference, and they did an interview with 4 different Christian university presidents. And the first question they asked the Christian university presidents was, what is it like being the president of a Christian university in a post-Christian world? And the president of Harding University kind of took offense at that, to say that the world is post-Christian because God's still alive, the church is still alive. And in fact, the church is growing. There's a greater percentage of Christians in the world today than there's been, statistically speaking, than we can remember. But where is it growing?
Not here.
But where is it growing? Africa.
India.
In India. Rich nations or poor nations? Poor. Hungry or full? Homed or homeless? I mean, they have homes, but compared like nothing we'd live in, right?
I heard a guy say one time that the reason that he supported foreign mission work was for the hope that one of those guys would come back and teach his grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, that was, it just kind of it opened my eyes. I was like, wow, could you think about that guy's going to come back to this U.S. soil and teach my grandchildren the Bible because people lose sight when they have.
I mean, it's a cycle, right? I mean, it's a cycle. The places where the churches are growing today are places close to where the church began 2,000 years ago. I mean, it's just we cycle through faith, right? But it's to the point of, I'll say that our understanding of fellowship should not be distorted by our perspective of who has physical need and who doesn't. Right? It's more of a we give and we help and we love because we're equals, because we have things in common. Right? So the last thing I want to mention, I want us to talk about, and we didn't even get to the lesson that I actually had for today. I'm not going to do this, sorry. Is one of the things that I want to recognize as we wrap this up is somebody got out of class too early. They still got 4 minutes. They should be talking about Jesus. Of course, it's Eric, right? The last thing I wanted to mention is the two greatest commands. What are they?
Love God and love people.
Love God and love people. How does our understanding of fellowship relate to the greatest commands?
They gave themselves first to Christ, the Lord.
They gave themselves first to God, and then they gave to others. Anything else?
Do we love one another? Do we really know our fellow Christians?
Right.
Because it's not just monetary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in fact, it's nothing. Like, I mean, our money, what we can give, does not define our fellowship. It's maybe a product of it. It's a I can't think of the right word, but it's like that's not the issue. It's a symptom of the issue. It just in a more positive way, right?
It's going to be gone in a twinkling of an eye.
Right.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You got it now, but you won't have it.
It's when my grandfather passed away, my pawpaw, he would just kind of wad up $100 bill and put it in his hand and shake somebody's hand who was in need and give it to him. When he passed away and they got into his wallet, they found like 12 $100 bills all wadded up, ready to go. And you know what? I bet it would hurt him to know that those were there and not given away. I mean, I'm sure my mom and her siblings and my grandma helped people with that, but it would have hurt him to know that he had that left and not given away, right? One quick point here is that our fellowship is both vertical and horizontal. Right? It's vertical in that our fellowship is founded and rooted in our relationship with God, but it's horizontal in that it spreads to one another. All right? Any other comments or questions here? All right. That's all I have. I appreciate your participation this morning.